All right, welcome back to another recording of Pencil Leadership Live. I am Chris Anderson, your host, and again, very excited to bring you another just spectacular guest, a really unique, intriguing guest. I was looking over his information, so if you're watching live and you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, in the comment section below. We'll get those and be able to hopefully incorporate them to the show. But this one's going to be a good one. It's going to be really entertaining for you because we have an entertainer among other things that he does. So I want to give a short introduction to Matt Wigler. He is not only an entrepreneur, but he's also a musical artist and public speaker based out of Miami, Florida. So he founded and is the CEO of MHW Live Music and Wigler Group. And he has an active career as a jazz and blues artist, which is really cool because I am not musically inclined at all. So I'm excited to hear more about that and how that kind of bleeds over into entrepreneurship. He performs with his trio at venues and festivals around the world, but he also speaks on topics including entrepreneurship, business to business sales, and building strong company culture now in a remote work environment. So, Matt, thank you so much for being on Pencil Leadership today.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how long have you been a blues and jazz artist, man?
Well, I started playing music professionally when I was really still like a little kid. I was in high school in Maryland and started playing with some really great local bands up there in the Washington, D.C. area. And so, yeah, basically I started, working in that capacity, as a young teenager. And that one of the interesting, we'll get into this, but all musicians basically, whether they know it or not, are entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, they're
And
branding themselves at least, right?
yeah, exactly.
That's
And
awesome.
there's a lot of cool and interesting metaphors and through lines between music and all kinds of other areas of life.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm excited to dive into that too because I love music. Like I said, I'm not musically inclined though. I mean, I could try to sing, and I don't know if you'd call it music coming out or melody or anything, but yeah, what music can do just with people and cultures and just I think it could bring the best out in people and so I'm excited to see that correlation. It looks like we have somebody else from Miami listening in on Facebook. So hello
Sounds good.
there. Yeah, another what do you call yourselves? Miamiites?
I'm not sure what you
I
call
don't
it.
know what they
Uh,
but
the person from Miami can see that it's well. Actually, I was going to say it's raining where I am, but that doesn't mean
okay.
it's raining where your other listener is.
Gotcha.
Because sometimes in Miami it'll be raining on 7th Street, but it's not raining on 8th Street. Little
That's
fun.
Florida for you, right?
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, so do you play okay, and this is going to show my not educational part with are you a saxophone or is that the only instrument in jazz and blue? What else is there?
I play piano.
Piano. Oh, cool. Okay. So like a little Billy Joel kind of thing.
Yeah, I play piano and I sing, and generally my own group when we go out and play is usually piano, bass, and drums.
That's cool.
And no, I don't fault you for that. Most people don't.
Yeah.
Aren't that familiar
I
with the
think
different
saxophone and then I think
instruments.
Ron Burgundy playing the jazz flute, the
Yeah, yeah.
jazz flute. Yeah. So, okay.
You can
Cool.
play jazz on any instrument. Jazz is really just a style or
That makes sense. I
you know,
guess, yeah,
idiom
that's
within.
true.
Yeah.
So
One of
yeah.
the things one of the things that I always talk about with my musician friends, and this has a great application to all kinds of other areas, is that my personal view is that people overcomplicate things a lot. And so, like for
Mm,
example, in music, there's only 12 notes,
true.
and within that, it can get very complicated and very whatever. So people go really deep into it, but at the end of the day, it's like, what's the big picture about this here?
Mm,
There's these instruments that we play in different combinations and these harmonies and melodies, and you think, well, wait a minute, there's only 12 notes, right? So
it's how
you know,
you use them and how you combine them, right? That makes it
yeah, exactly. And you'd be
the
surprised,
beauty.
people would be surprised within different styles of music that really it's like a language where there's a, a lot in common between the different styles.
Hmm.
The melodies and the harmonies that you hear in a pop song, that you hear on the radio, are very similar to, something that people were composing 500 years ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't change that much.
That's a really intriguing point too, and it kind of with entrepreneurship. There's not really a whole lot of new. There's not really anything new under the sun. It's just how we're presenting it now and how we're incorporating the different pieces of building businesses and that
Right.
all that goes into
Exactly.
that. So I think that's a really great point, and there's so much though that you could get lost in music and in entrepreneurship. So I like how they kind of go in tandem. But I'm sure along the way you've had a lot of help and a lot of people kind of that you've learned from in music or business, I guess. Who have been some of your big mentors so far?
So I've had some amazing music mentors.
Okay.
Um, I had, I would say, three very influential music teachers growing up, um, that were amazing. Especially, um, there was a band that was very well known in the DC area when I was growing up, the Deanna Bogart Band. I remember one time I went out with my dad to hear them play, and we went up to the Deanna, the band leader, and we tried to convince her to give me piano lessons, right? And it took a few rounds of convincing, and finally, she said, "Okay, fine." Um, and after a couple of years, I ended up actually starting to play with the band. We would go out and play. I would be a member of the band sometimes,
That's awesome.
and they become family friends and all of that. But um, so musical mentors, and then business mentors. Yeah, I would say starting most importantly with my dad, who
Mhm.
also is an entrepreneur, and I've just I'm out meeting people all the time.
Yep.
I have great mentors from uh, business school at University of Miami. Um, had a great experience there and became friendly with a lot of the professors there and people in the community. So yeah, I mean, one of the big misconceptions that I think people have is this idea that you have to figure everything out by yourself. You have
Right.
to do it by yourself.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
actually more about uh, bringing people together and
Hmm.
letting them do it rather
Yeah.
than figuring it out yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because we don't know everything, and if we're trying to do it on our own, it's going to take such a longer time
Yeah,
span because we're going to hit the same mistakes that these mentors
totally.
that we've had have been through and that they've learned from and they can share with us. And like you mentioned, if you can bring these people around you, they're going to have strengths that you can lean into versus, I'm not good at everything. And so if you can bring teammates around you that are better at certain things, that's going to help you get the job done at a different rate as well. What are some things that you've really learned from your mentors so far along your journey? Some really like key gold nuggets, I guess, that you're like, oh my gosh, that was gold.
Well, I would say one of the really interesting things about starting with learning how to be a professional musician
Hmm.
is that the horizon of time that it takes to get something to accomplish something. Musicians, one of the interesting things is that musicians, whether they've realized it consciously or whether it's in kind of subconscious, everybody knows this. Uh, it's going to take someone, I don't know, 10 years or 10 years of practicing hours every single day. That
Hmm.
type of discipline over that long of a time period to be able to have somebody pay you $200 to go out and play your instrument. Right? I mean, just think about that for a second.
Yep.
And this idea that in other words, starting a business is in some ways easier because you could make a living. It doesn't take you 10 years to make a living if you start going out there and doing it. But the point
Hmm.
is that having that long-term vision and long-term time horizon and patience, but not patience like waiting around for something to happen. Patience like I'm doing it every day, you know, doing what I need to do, staying on my track. That's why it's
Mm-hmm.
good to have mentors because the people who have done it before can help you see if you're on track.
Yep.
But then having an understanding that it's gonna, things take a long time to come to fruition.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest issues that people have all over the place is this expectation that things are going to happen really fast, or you hear about these unicorn kind of things out of the news. And I read something. I'm going to misquote this because I just read it yesterday. I think it was Steve Jobs, and the quote was something to the effect of uh, overnight successes, if you look closely, usually was that a quote from yours, Steph?
I'm
Usually,
not sure.
I'm not sure, but I read this yesterday. Overnight successes, if you look closely, usually they actually took a long time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I heard Elon Musk or something say um, they didn't see the 20 years and the sleepless nights and all that
Right, exactly.
to
And that's how it
of
is.
the overnight success. Yeah.
Well, right. Oh, it's an overnight success, but wait a minute. You worked, 12 hours a day for 10 years. Well, that's not
Mm-hmm.
really an overnight success. But if you
Yep.
start, I mean, to maybe this is relevant to some of your listeners. I mean, if you start, then you're on the path. And
Yep.
then, especially the people, look, somebody who starts young and then 10 years later, they're still relatively young. Wow, that's amazing. Look how they did that. But or if you start, it doesn't matter if you start young or old, but the point is, things take a long time, right? You
Yeah.
don't see when you go to hear a concert at the music hall and somebody's up there playing on the stage. You didn't see the practicing for 8 hours a day for the last 10 years. You just see
Yep.
they make it look easy, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
that's what's happened.
A lot of people, and I see it in podcasters, I see it in entrepreneurs, is they overestimate what they can do in a year and
Yeah,
underestimate what they can do in 10. And
totally.
it's a long, I mean, it's a long-term game. And these people that you see that are quote unquote overnight success in your eyes is exactly what you say is like, we don't see the work and the effort in the background in the years before, but musician, podcaster, entrepreneur, whatever it is, if we're doing like you said, if you show up every day, have the patience, as in, hey, I know this is going to take some time, and we put it in the work, that's going to start compounding, and eventually that success is going to start coming at a more rapid rate than it did when you started. But you've got to
Absolutely.
stick with it and keep going, and not stop and then start again, because that's just going to delay that inevitable success if you just stay with it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and we'll talk about the compounding because
Mm,
this is one of the main things that we talk about with our clients at Wigler Group. And one of the, a lot of people, for whatever reason, are impatient or, you know, I mean, it makes sense. But the compounding, we can get into this later, but the compounding when it comes to sales is a
mm,
very important thing that, you know, basically, um, when you're reaching out, developing awareness in your market for whatever it is that whatever service or product, whatever you sell, usually not much happens in the beginning. And a lot of
yeah.
people get discouraged and maybe they give up after 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't see that, there's some point in the future where it's gonna be really good.
Yeah.
It's like you're chipping away, and sometimes some people just get 1 inch from where the gold is, and then they give up.
Yep.
Things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's so sad to think about how many people have quit just shy of like that breakthrough.
And
That
and you don't know where the breakthrough is going to come
right.
because
Yeah.
it's hidden, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's a difficult uh,
Yeah.
sort of an exercise.
Yep. Again, I think if it was super easy, everyone obviously would be successful in doing it. And I think that's the reason. I think it's to create those people, and that they have to go through those rough times, the work to get there, to really have a good foundation, to really have the good
Mhm.
perspective. Like, hey, yeah, because you get to new levels, like you get different successes, and it's a new difficulty. There's new things that are hard, and so like when you get to a certain point, you look back at like when I started, I thought that was hard, but now what I'm having to deal with, this is harder. And so
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's just a
absolutely.
change of levels. And um, I think what you said there about like the compounding on fails and things like that. So pencil leadership, the second and third traits have to kind of do with that. The second is that pencils go through sharpenings to have a better point, and they're hard, and they take part of us away. And then the third is that they have an eraser to fix mistakes, and we do the same things. We have hard times that make us different, change us, and we mess up. But we can always work on fixing those. So through your career so far, through your entrepreneurial journey, your music journey, what what hard things have you experienced? What mistakes have you experienced that have shaped you and made you better? And how did you go about kind of compounding those fails?
So let me give you the short summary here.
Okay.
So I started my first company, MHW Live Music, May 2016. That's like 5.5 years
hmm
ago, and we do the live entertainment programming. And
Okay.
all that means is if you go into a nice hotel and you see like a guy playing guitar in the lobby, or you see a DJ out at the pool, and you see different musicians that are performing in the areas of the hotel, we manage that program of entertainment. At this moment, we have about 70 hotels that we do that for around the country. And so that's the first business. So, as you can imagine, when every hotel in the whole world shut down on March 20th, I think it was, of
hmm
2020, we went to zero for a while. Like all the vendors and
Right.
hotel related, people went to zero. And coming out of that, I started Wigler Group with the theory that we had developed a good business to business sales process for the live music company, that maybe we could do that on behalf of clients,
Mm.
and they could outsource basically the cold calling and the appointment setting, so that the business owner could just, take the meeting and, you know, focus on uh,
Yep.
the more fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
Hey, okay. So with that being the background, the, the biggest thing that I learned coming out of that COVID shutdown, to answer your question, so we had a great, we still have, as she's still with us, but at the time that everything shut down, we had found an amazing salesperson. And there was a question about, are we going to keep her, even though we didn't really have any money to keep her? Are we going to let it, what are we going to do? And so after going back and forth on it for a while, we decided to keep her working full time through the whole pandemic. And if you can imagine, she was calling hotel managers uh, in June of 2020, asking them about live entertainment at their bars and their restaurants. Can you imagine how outrageous
Wow.
that must have sounded?
Yeah.
Right? And but we said, look, we see this as an opportunity to get to know each other, because 18 months from now, which is right now,
hmm
we want you to call us back. Well, and so now they're all calling us
People are
back.
calling us back. That's
You
awesome.
can't imagine. I mean, we just the other day, uh, you know, I'm talking to my business partner, and we were here in the office together, and his phone is just ringing, you know, back to back to back the whole day. And I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe," because we all work from home usually, right? So
Yeah.
I said, "Oh my God, last time I was in the office with you before COVID, we were lucky if we would get one phone call in a week, and now your phone is ringing. You're getting 10 calls in a row the whole day. I mean, it was just that compounding
Yep.
of all of the work that we've done for the last 2 years. Now we're finally starting to see it
Mm.
return an amazing result,
And
and
that's,
that's a
go
good
ahead. Yeah.
example of
Yep.
how long it takes to get something done.
That's what I was going to say is people listening to this, like, Matt and then went 2 years with really no results, but they're putting in the work, doing the calls, meeting with people, connecting with people for 2 years. And now it's starting to show that fruit is starting to come from the seeds they planted. And so think of it that way. I mean, starting a business, a podcast, whatever it is, put in the work, and it's not going to happen overnight. You know, extend it. Give yourself a 5 year goal,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
just go to work and do the right things. Get a mentor, become part of a program, something that can guide you into how to do these processes, whether building a podcast, building a business, and stick with it. It's good. You're going to get discouraged. You're going to have the ups and downs. Like Matt and I both have been there, but you just got to keep moving forward. And I think Matt just shows that as a testament. Like just keep doing it through a pandemic, even 2 years of putting in the work, creating those relationships, and that fruit started to show.
And what's funny is a lot of people asked in the beginning of the pandemic, "Are you going to pivot? Like, are you going to
Right.
change what your business does?" And I said, "No, absolutely not, because the what we do is relevant. It's just not relevant now. Everything's shut
Yep.
down. But as soon as everything opens again, we knew that it was relevant, and we knew that we had a little niche that was unique that nobody else is really capturing the way that
Yeah.
we are. And so I said, let's take this as an opportunity, right, to
Yep.
really uh, get a big head start when everything reopens.
Yeah.
Uh, if you pivot every 6 months, then you don't
You
get
just keep
anywhere,
going in circles, right?
right? And I mean, yeah, it's an interesting challenge because I agree with you. 5 year vision, even a
Mm,
10 year or 20 year
yeah.
vision. I mean, one of the interesting things, and I didn't realize this until, for example, until I went to business school at University of Miami and actually met some people that are like this, because I hadn't really been around people that with this attitude growing up, in high school or whatever. But for example, I met some people over there who had really old family real estate businesses, things like that.
Uh,
And some of them have a 100-year horizon. You can imagine that. These really wealthy families or whatever.
yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, the longer your vision, the longer your horizon. I'm sure Warren Buffett has a, you know, 50 year,
Super long.
100 year,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
There's a really long horizon. Um, that will really get you focused on the fundamentals, I think.
Yeah.
It's not about the what's hot, between today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, that is not very exciting to most young people because I think especially the economy or the cycle we're in at this moment is a very I don't know if we want to get into this too much, but it's a very there's a lot of sort of get rich quick kind of
Hmm.
fluffy stuff happening out there right now. But to me, if you have a long-term horizon, then that brings you back to the fundamentals. The hardest part is you ask someone, okay, I want to start a business. I have my 5 year vision. How do I know that I'm on track
Mm,
from one day to the next within that 5 year period? I think that's the most challenging thing
yeah.
across the board. That's the most challenging. If you said I love playing the piano, I want to learn how to be a great piano player. 5 years is a realistic horizon. You could be quite good after 5 years. You worked on it every day. But how
Hmm.
do you know that you're practicing the right things that are getting you towards that goal when you can't see the progress from one day to the next? Just like
Yep.
you can't see the hour hand moving on a clock. So that's
Yep.
where, like you said, a mentor. I mean, I know that almost sounds like, it's like kind of boring advice. Like, yeah, okay, fine. But, um, how do you know that you're on track from one day to the next?
Yeah.
I I can tell you sort of, at least with respect to the sales part of the business, I have kind of a good opinion, I think, about how to know that you're on track with that. But that's very important, um, because, like I said, you can't see the hour hand moving from one day to the next.
Right.
But you've got to keep it going for that long period.
Yeah, and I think with that, just knowing what's the right thing, because I mean, people, there's so many shiny objects out there, and there's so many little things people want to incorporate that don't necessarily matter, especially early on,
Yeah.
that you waste time, you waste energy on. So focusing on the things that really truly matter, and really collecting that data or really measuring, having the metrics, so like what the goal is and then reverse engineer it backwards. Okay, what do I need to do daily then? And am I actually doing it? I find that's a big one that people, they have so much like mental mindset blocks,
Yep.
paradigms, things like that, that they know what they need to do. I was there, and I still am breaking some down. Um, but it's like they know what they need to do, but there's something up in their mind that's blocking them from actually taking action on that
Yeah.
consistently. And so I think even then, that's kind of the big shift is in your mindset, understanding
Totally.
it's going to be hard, and then breaking down those barriers within your, your pre-programmed paradigms to
Yeah.
get those actions done each day.
That is the challenge that seems to be the most universal across all people.
Yeah.
And I would say everybody, get take that 5-year vision, okay? And it's like, okay, this is how I see myself. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you have an example from one of your listeners, some kind of business that they're trying to start or I mean,
Yeah. I mean, they want to become a writer. So they're trying to
okay.
get some blog post. Yeah. So a writer, blogger, things like
You know,
that.
so for example, I want to be a writer and making my living doing
Hmm.
that and having this amount of, you know, recognition and published in all these places. And then you
Yeah.
imagine, wow, that would be so great. The exercise is imagine yourself having accomplished that in 5 years,
Hmm.
and imagine what your sort of way of being would be in that situation. And you got to start acting like that right now.
Yes.
And that
Absolutely.
doesn't mean to be like cocky or whatever. It
No.
means your way of being and sort of the aura that you would have or the and it's not to sound like fluffy about this. The things that you would say and your level of comfort picking up the phone and asking somebody for something and all of that. And this is where there's a real chicken or the egg issue that a lot of people have, right? People imagine a lot of people I think will say things like, well, after I've accomplished X, Y, and Z, then I'll feel comfortable picking up the phone and asking for this. But that's never gonna happen. You have to flip it the other way around, and that's
Yep.
why I say imagine how you would sort of you've got this vision of yourself in the future,
Yep.
and then you've gotta even though it makes you uncomfortable, makes you nervous, you've gotta go out there and do it now
Yeah.
because that's the only way you're gonna get there. People are putting the chicken before the egg or the cart before the horse, right? When they
Yep.
waiting around, saying, "Well, I'll do," you can't ever do this like, "Well, I'll feel comfortable
Right.
making that call after X, Y, and Z happens," because it's actually the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point because there's just, if you can put yourself and visualize, see yourself as that future self, like what will you be like then? Like how will you be better? How will you present yourself? How you will you carry yourself? You'll have that confidence, and you can go back to that and say, okay, right now I don't want to make these calls. I don't want to send these messages. I don't want to do
Right.
X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. But when I'm at that point, when I'm hit my goals, like what would that person do?
Yeah.
What
Well,
would
I'm
I do then? And then that would be okay. This is what I need to do. I need to make that call. I need to do
totally.
that, or things like that.
And I'll bring it down to all the way to the ground here because we're still
Yeah,
in kind of like, which is good. We're still,
yeah.
up in the cloud here. Um, so it's like, okay, you want to be a writer, or this is applicable across anything.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta go out and find the people that are important that need to know you,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's people that are publishing certain, you know, magazines or publications or whatever that is relevant to you. Define who those people are. Write them down. I mean, you use a CRM system and all that. Is the best way to do it. But whatever, doesn't matter. Write them down, and then every single day, you need to reach out to them, call them, email them, follow up, and I would say most people give up after 1 or 2 or 3 follow-ups. I can't tell you the number of musicians that because I've obviously a lot of musician friends that I
Yeah.
play music with, and I've heard so many people, they get all upset, "Oh, I reached out to a music venue twice and they didn't respond."
Yep.
Well, the typical number of follow-ups for for us to get a contract for both of my companies is 20, 25, 30. It's not 2 or 3. It's
No.
20 or 30.
Yep.
I'm talking about it may take 10, 15, 20 follow-ups just to get somebody to initially come to a meeting with us, okay? And then, assuming that we've selected them correctly to reach out, which at this point, we've got good definitions of who we want as a client, so
Yeah.
usually we get it right. Then they say, "Okay, let's assume that they're in the market for what we sell, like, they liked our presentation. Okay, great." Then there's 10, 15, 20 more follow-up. This is what people find hard to believe. After they've said, "I love your service. I need it. I want it. Send me your contract to review." There's 10 or 15 or 20 follow-ups from that point to getting it signed.
Yeah.
Not because there's anything wrong with them or there's anything wrong with us, but because people overestimate how important they are in the lives of the other person.
Yeah.
Okay, so and it's not for me to be annoying, and I'm nice, and sometimes I'll go on my phone and I'll just send I'll just say, any update in the subject
Mm.
line, and I'll blast it off, and it's very casual, and everybody understands we're just gonna follow up until we get the answer, and
Yep.
we're gonna be friendly,
Yep.
and that's it. But wow, it takes a lot of
It
follow-up,
does. That's the thing.
and
People think immediately when they reach out to someone they'll get, get an answer. And it's like, no,
no,
it's
no,
like
no,
the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So you just got to
absolutely.
keep prevalent because I mean, most people, sorry, no one knows you. No one knows
Thank
what
you.
you do. And so
Right.
you've got to get that. You got to be known first. And then you've just got to build that relationship and
Yep.
show the value.
And now your listeners are saying, "Oh my god, that sounds like so much work," right?
Yep.
Well, it is.
And that's why it's not for everybody.
And look, in the very beginning, I was doing it myself.
Hmm.
Now, knock on wood, I have salespeople that are doing that for
Yep.
both companies, but, it takes something in order to get there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like we were saying before we went live here. I mean, what does it take to go from it's a side hustle to it's a full-time gig for me to it's a company? There's a
Yep.
whole progression there, and if you're gonna
Right.
do it the old-fashioned way without raising money. And not there's anything wrong with raising money, but I think doing things the old-fashioned, there's nothing wrong with doing it, the traditional way. You got to go out there and sell enough to where you can take some of the money and use it
Yeah.
to hire your first person, and then do it again, and then you can use it to hire your second person, and so on and so forth. You
Yep.
basically have to get to 150% capacity so that you can take half of that money and pay somebody 75% of what they're actually worth and convince them how great it's gonna be if they
Right.
stick with because that's what it
Yeah.
is in a
Yep.
new company. You're not gonna pay market rate, you gotta
Mm-mm.
say, "Look, we're gonna go out and build something together," right? But, no, the amount of, persistence and follow-up that it takes to get these things done
Yep.
is, it's just way beyond what most people think, even
Hmm.
even sales professionals, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So,
It was more when I started. Like I learned that same lesson. I'm like, oh, okay. Consistency and persistence is what I've got to just be. I've just got to
yep,
have that and just keep going. Keep your head down and keep moving forward.
yep, absolutely.
So I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think there's been a lot of good, valuable nuggets that people can take listening in. But I'm curious. So the fifth trait of pencil leadership is everyone's created uniquely with purpose and potential to leave a positive mark in the world. So when everything is said and done for you here on Earth, what do you hope your positive mark is?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, the way that so wow, that is a big question. I don't know. You got to come back and check with me every 5 years on that one because
Right.
I think it'll change. I mean, my hope is that we become successful enough that maybe there's some philanthropic stuff 20
Hmm.
years from now. It'll take a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the point is that just with respect to these companies, which are still, relatively small, but, we're trying to make a positive impact on the people that are on, our teams and our employees,
Hmm.
and the clients.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, my feeling is if you go out and have a high level of integrity about what you're doing, treat people really well. You have, patience, which is what we've been talking about. Then, you're going to leave people better off having dealt with you or worked with you than they were before. And
Absolutely.
that's a good thing. I mean, I think that, and this isn't even getting into having the businesses be, charitable because that's not what I'm saying. But it's
Hmm.
about having people, better off after they uh, were your friend, were your coworker, were your client, whatever, any
Yeah.
relationship with you, better off than they were before.
Mm.
And the way that I see this is what I tell people when we're hiring new people now is the when you work with us, what I'm trying to create is that the company is a vehicle for you to accomplish your goals. So if you stay 1 year, if you stay 20 years, doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
what are your personal goals? What are you trying to do? And can we make this a mutually beneficial sort of a situation where you use this as a vehicle? What I mean by that
Mm.
is, for example, we've hired professional musicians, obviously, to work in the live music company, and you know, um, I'm trying to think of a good example. Maybe a good example is now that I get the income from working a office job, if you business job, if you will, even though it's music related,
Hmm.
that allows me more freedom to work on the artistic side of my music without having to worry about taking every uh, opportunity because I need the money. Some things like
Yeah.
that. There's all these different things like that.
Yeah.
Um, so that's sort of how I see the businesses. Um, I I think similar to you, really like sort of coaching or helping people. This kind of subject we're talking about, I think, is fulfilling if you can have people. Um, sorry,
No, no worries.
this kind of subject I think is very fulfilling. You take someone who wants to start their own business or become successful, and I'd like to do more mentoring or coaching,
Mm.
or teaching in the future, stuff like that. So that's maybe at some. I got a long time, so at
Yeah,
some point in the future, I think that would be very, uh, you know, satisfying to do that. But
for sure.
that's my 2021 answer.
No,
But
I like it. Yeah, I think it's a you got the vision there, and I can see the structure, and you head in that direction. So it's really cool to see the impact you want to do in so many different ways within your team and with other people out there. So,
yeah.
very very cool to hear. Now, Matt, where can people connect with you, find you, and find out more about what you do?
Um, so I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you go LinkedIn/Matt Wigler, I think I'm the only Matt Wigler, so you'll see me on there. And my website is mattwigler.com, which is a good landing place where you can see music stuff and you can see links to the businesses on there. Um,
Perfect.
and Yeah, so I would definitely say, yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn because I'm always posting stuff and all that to me is a great platform. That's the only social media that I use.
Awesome.
I'm like kind of old fashioned in some ways. I don't use Facebook or Instagram. I mean, I do have a Facebook, but I never use it. But LinkedIn
Yeah.
is where I'm concentrating all my energy.
Energy. That's awesome. Well, yeah, everyone, make sure you get connected with Matt and check out what he's doing. It's really a lot of cool stuff out there. But again, Matt, thank you so much for being on Pencil Leadership today.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And guys, thanks for tuning in. If you watch this live, thanks so much. If you're watching a replay, let us know. Share this with somebody that you could make an impact. That you could leave a positive mark in their lives by sharing it, and we can get this message out to more people that way. But until next time, let's go out and be pencil leaders.